Tokyo Mirage Sessions FE Encore on Switch is a really long name. I mean, it is the crossover between Shin Megami Tensei and the Fire Emblem series, with me being only familiar with one side of that equation, the SMT side. But from what I understand, this game is very much Shin Megami Tensei gameplay mixed with Fire Emblem characters, which means I will hold this to the standard of SMT games while still taking into consideration that it is a spin-off with another game series, which I guess leads us to talk about the story of this game first, which I'll say right away I don't like. I mean, location-wise, it takes place in central Tokyo, which puts it in place for almost unavoidable comparison to another SMT spin-off that also takes place in Tokyo and came out around the same time as the original Wii U version. Gee, I wonder what game that could be. But while I may compare it, it is important to say I'm not going to hold it against the game, even if I'm not a huge fan of its story. So basically, this plot revolves around this group of teenagers solving these very paranormal crimes in these dangerous worlds that exist parallel to the real world of the game. And as they save certain people, these will discover their inner powers and join your party to help continue solve these mysteries. Sound like something you know? But the twist here is that the characters here want to be performers in some form, like I guess idols, which are very popular in Japan, and while this does play heavily into the gameplay and how things work here, differentiating it from other SMT games, especially that one series of games, I just didn't enjoy it. It felt shallow to me. And I totally admit that a big part of it is because of my lack of interest in idols or dancing, even singing. And because of that, I couldn't relate to these characters and their struggle. And that, of course, affected my enjoyment of this story. And I feel as the story hinges a bit too much on these struggles. And I also think that I don't need to relate to a story in a literal way to enjoy it, and I just did not find myself caring much for the trials and tribulations of these characters. And I think that at the end of the day, that has more to do with the characters and them not being well developed than my lack of interest in idols. Regardless, from what I understand, characters in Tokyo Mirage Sessions are sort of like mirrors of characters from several Fire Emblem games. And maybe if you played those games, then you would already know who they are and you would enjoy them more. But to me, it really comes off as like when a person tries to act as a close friend even though you don't know them at all. If that makes any sense, I feel these characters needed more initial development and also just better character arcs to make me care. I mean, some do, but a lot of these characters really just don't go anywhere or just end up going with the most pathway possible. Moments like a character going, I can't do it, and then the other characters go, no, you can do it, and then they do it, happens a bit too much in this game. I know I'm ranting, but I honestly don't hate it. I just don't like it. And coming from this studio, it's kind of lame, because I know this studio can and has done much better character writing. But now let's move on to the gameplay. Arguably the more interesting piece of this game, given its mixture of SMT and Fire Emblem, but at the end of the day, it's really just SMT with a few spins. Instead of demons or personas, you have mirages, which are also based on Fire Emblem characters, from what I understand. And much like SMT games, it is very much your rock, paper, scissors style of JRPG combat, but with that more hardcore SMT twist, where buffs and debuffs are a lot more important. The one thing differentiating things here being the session attacks, where one or multiple characters will butt in and attack your enemies if you hit their weak spot, kinda creating a sort of combo that does really high damage, because these session attacks do as much damage as your regular attacks do, and don't even spend SP, or what you may know as mana, in almost every JRPG. The spendable energy to create special or magic attacks. Here, though, there is also a special SP bar that allows you to do these big special attacks that do not only do more damage but also trigger the sessions for all the characters, creating an exponential damage. And this session gimmick is really what the gameplay will revolve around, and that's a good thing. It's different from other SMT games I have played before, and it felt refreshing. As you have to build your team around these, only having 4 characters in your party at once, but also later on in the game you can unlock abilities that allow other characters outside of the party to join in on sessions, which is cool but also very grindy. Honestly, this isn't the worst part of the grind. The worst part is my biggest problem with the game in general is the upgrade path. It is insanely linear for an SMT game. It is very much just keep leveling up to get stronger, and there isn't a whole lot of variety in the gameplay. Again, very linear even when compared to the SMT spin-off Persona, which has very linear progression for its party members as well. But here, even the main character is linear, and it's not like the characters here are insanely different from the ones in the SMT series, because while these might be different monsters, at the end of the day their movesets are taken from your average SMT demons, and anyone who's played an SMT games knows that playing with just one demon for the whole game is kinda boring. And this also adds up when the equipables here are very much in a situation of higher is better, and even later on when you get an option to do this sort of evolution that makes them focus on a couple of stats that they were already somewhat specialized in, which is good, but it still didn't feel like a big difference, as it is again just stats that they were already sort of specialized in, just now it's even more specialized. Which, to be fair, is something that the Persona games also do, but not to this extent. It just goes to show how far little variety, aka ability to capture and change between demons you have, because you don't have any, and the replayability and longevity suffers from that. The game did feel like it was dragging for me at the end, especially with just the random battles. And the final thing for me is the difficulty, because, and I hate to keep comparing this to Persona, but it is so derivative of that game, much more than other Shin Megami Tensei games in my opinion, even more than the main series. And I want to say that Persona is easy, and that's good. It goes with the more laid back setting, but Tokyo Mirage Sessions is very similar in setting and vibe, but Mirage Sessions does not go this route. It is very much traditional SMT difficulty all the way. And it can be deceiving. The first dungeon is very easy, even the boss, and then it just jumps. And you know it's hard when you're being challenged, even when you're above the recommended level for any given fight. That being said, I'm not saying that this is a bad thing. Maybe I would have if there wasn't such a big variety of difficulty settings in this game already. So thankfully the customization is here if you want it, and I'm not gonna hold being kinda hard for your average JRPG against it. But it does lead me to say that if you're gonna play this game and you're new to the SMT series, then maybe start on a lower difficulty. Anyways, now to finish this off, we'll talk about the graphics and sound. Of course, once again, I have to address that this is a crossover between Shin Megami Tensei and Fire Emblem. I've been saying that a lot. Specifically Fire Emblem characters in a sort of SMT world, which in this game is just the real world, and the SMT world pertains more to the gameplay. And so, to be honest, not knowing much about Fire Emblem, this kinda just looks generic. Looks like a very bland anime. And the thing is, Fire Emblem does have a very striking style, but if you put its characters in regular clothes and in a regular setting, you lose a lot of it. And by a lot I mean most of it. This game, especially for the time it came out, it wasn't ugly, but there's also nothing particularly special about it. Even the dungeons kinda just look like in between Persona 4 and 5, closer to 4. If there had been a game between that, which this game did came out between, funny enough, but it also lacks a lot of the meaningfulness that usually comes with these dungeons, here being more made to fit the theme of what's going on and the overall story, which is fine. It is very much like other SMT games, but it just isn't very striking. Let's say Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne, which goes for the same approach of creating its dungeons, Mirage Sessions just looks kinda bland compared to it. I don't hate it, especially since it's very bright and colorful and it has those very stylized menus that have become very popular due to the Persona series. Not that this was the first one to do it, and that's not what I'm implying. But it looks good, and I'm sorry that I keep comparing this to Persona, and I know that must be annoying to some of you, but they are very similar. It's clear Persona was the base for this over any game in the SMT series and spin-offs, and definitely not based on any Fire Emblem game. I don't think, at least. Now, soundtrack-wise, it's probably the most wholly original thing about this game, and because of it, it's probably the best. I don't know what Fire Emblem music is like, so maybe it's very derivative of that, but regardless, I really enjoyed it. It's kinda like anime music, but by that I mean it seems like music that could be used in an opening for an anime, which could just mean this is like a genre of Japanese rock, but regardless, it's pretty good, and it stands out in a good way. It adds to the game, given so much of the story does revolve around music and show business. So yeah, it's really good, and it's good to end on a good note. And now to score this game, I will be giving Tokyo Mirage Sessions FE Encore a 6 out of 10. It is good, but not too good, I guess. I really wanted to like this game, but it was kind of a letdown. But regardless, let's go into the recommendations. And honestly, I don't know who to recommend this game to. If you're a Fire Emblem fan, then there's not much for you here. The gameplay will be nothing that you're used to, and from what I understand, characters here are almost unrecognizable from their original versions. So yeah, be aware of that. For SMT fans, well, I guess if you're dying for more SMT, like gameplay, then sure, give it a try, but probably not at full price, which isn't such a hard thing to recommend anymore because Atlas games are not the nightmare to find after release like they used to be, especially being able to just buy them digitally. And yes, that's a good thing. If you're not a fan of neither, or at least just not familiar with the series, then this is not the one to start with, unless your only console you have access to is the Switch or the Wii U. Except if you're trying to get into Fire Emblem, this is not the game to do it, regardless of your situation. Anyways, regardless of your decision, I hope that this video helped you with it. And regardless of that, please consider subscribing, liking, commenting, all the things you can do for free on YouTube. And regardless of that, I hope you have a good day. Goodbye. Please don't hate me for comparing this game to Persona so much.